Hello everyone and welcome to this short video on English Language Paper 1, Question 1. Before we get started on today's question, I want to remind you of both language papers, the reading and the writing sections. Should you want to make more notes or look at this in more detail, I suggest you pause the recording until you are ready to continue. If not, we'll continue with today's question. This series of videos will go through each question from the reading and writing sections of paper 1 and paper 2, so you feel super confident before sitting your exams. So for English Language Paper 1, Section A, what do I have to do? You'll be given a fiction extract from the 20th or 21st century. That means the extract comes from a story. You must respond to 4 questions based on the extract, and you have around an hour for this section. Following Section A, you'll have Section B, the writing section, which we suggest you spend about 45 minutes on in total. Therefore, an hour for the 4 reading questions, but you need to be really clear with your timings and how long you're going to take on each question to ensure that you can be successful in each. So for question 1, what do you have to do? Question 1 asks you to list 4 things you learned from a given section of the extract. The question checks your understanding of the text and there are up to 4 marks available. But how should you do it? You can use direct quotations, or your own words, or a mixture of both. You need to make sure your choices are relevant to the question focus and they only come from the lines that you have been given. You need to make 4 distinct points and keep them short but clear. A sample task could read again lines 1 to 10 of the source and list 4 things from this part of the text about the abandoned child. When it comes to your answers, we've already said they need to be clear. If you simply put, for example, moaning, this doesn't get a mark because it doesn't provide a clear answer to the question. It doesn't have a noun or a pronoun and we don't know who is moaning. However, by phrasing it the child is moaning, this does get a mark because it's clear and links specifically back to the question. So here's an example question. Reread lines 11 to 19 and list 4 things from this part of the text about the travel security officer. So straight away, I know that I need to list, and I always like to box my command words so I know exactly what's expected of me in each question. And then I want to look at the topic. What is my focus? So this is the travel security officer. So I'm going to underline the topic. And then finally, I'd like to go back and double check if I've missed any important information. Well, for me, obviously here, it's 11 to 19, so that I don't pick anything that goes outside of those lines. So before I've even looked at the extract, I know roughly what it is that I am going to be looking at. So then let's look at the extract together. So here's an example extract. Now this is not an official AQA paper, this is a made-up paper, so you won't find this or answers online, so it's one we can use together here. So I'm going to go ahead and box off the section that I'm allowed to use for this question, so there's no chance of me going off into any of the other lines. And as I read, I'm going to underline the sections that I think are appropriate. Now I know for this question we don't have to annotate anything, we're not looking for method, we're not looking for effects of method, but it's a good habit to get into, and you'll see that's why I use a coloured pen rather than a highlighter. So as soon as I'm reading, I'm forced to think about if I was going to have to annotate this, I don't have to switch between a highlighter and a pen, I'm ready to go. So when the officer handed me my astrolabe, I resisted the urge to snatch it back. He was an old Koosh man, so old that he was privileged to wear the blackest turban and veil. So I know he was an old man. He was so old that he was privileged to wear the blackest turban and face veil. His shaky hands were so gnarled and arthritic that he nearly dropped my astrolabe. He was bent like a dying palm tree. And when he'd said, "You have never travelled, I must do a full scan but remain where you are," his voice was drier than the red desert outside my city. But he read my astrolabe as fast as my father, which both impressed and scared me. This is obviously something he is competent at doing. He coaxed it open by whispering a few choice equations. So another action we have here. And his suddenly steady hands worked the dials as if they were his own. Now this example, there are lots of things I could choose to write about, and it's only 4 marks, so I'm only expected to put 4 things. There's likely to be more than 4 things for you to include within your answer. So now we've got those examples, we can go back to the question and we have our lines for our 4 answers. Now I'm going to keep these nice and simple, and as we said in the previous slide, we want to make sure that we are looking at making these clear. So we might choose to use the travel security officer at the beginning of each line. We can just use he here because we've only got one character that we are talking about, and we know if we say he, we know who is going to be referred to. So I'm going to keep them nice and simple. We're not going to overthink this question. So for example, he was old. That's going to get us 1 mark. Okay, it tells us twice that he was old, so it's something that can be proven. You might want to put something like he had shaky hands. So we are told in the extract that he had shaky hands and they were gnarled and arthritic. So again, I've started with he and I've done something nice and simple. You might want to use he was bent like a dying palm tree. Now this is a quotation, so you could choose to put it in those quotation marks. You don't have to, you could rewrite this in your own words should you wish to. And you'll get a little bit more room on your answer paper than I've got here. So I need one more thing that I'm going to include, and I'm going to put his voice. Oh. Sorry, we'll try that again. His voice was drier than the red desert. And that would get you your 4 marks. Okay, so hopefully this video has been helpful to you, and you join me again for question 2.